Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Cimnanya. Thank you so much for the support. Hope you all are doing great. So, when I come across this video, I merged them together, but they are really very vital. The other one is talking about how Black people were used as experiment, and you all know that back then Black people were used, like in a Tuskegee experiment, whereby they used Black people for the experiment without even telling them what they were being injected into. All these things are the things that each time I think about them, and I am like, how did we get there? But then that was absolutely what happened during back then, right? And the fact that they did not also give them the right medications, and at some point they started dying off and also transferring that. And while that experiment was going on, you all remember that they were told that it was only going to last for how many? So for a couple of months, right? And it ended up lasting for how many years? And some people passed, were unalive through there. See, sincerely speaking, one thing I have found out about these people is like they operate in the same way. And if you have been able to study and understand them, you absolutely will know each time they want to come out with something else. And I keep saying that if you do not know your history, you are bound to repeat it. Stay glued. Let's get into this.
Throughout American history, Black people have been subjected to numerous unethical, inhumane experiments. These experiments were typically carried out under the guise of medical or scientific research, but were rooted in racism, exploitation, and the dehumanization of Black individuals. Here are some of the most notorious examples. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment between 1932 and 1972. I love how they always try to pretend like it was so long ago. One of the most infamous medical experiments in American history. This study was conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service. Black men in Macon County, Alabama, many of whom were poor and uneducated, were told that they were being treated for bad blood, but were never informed they had syphilis. The study continued for 40 years, during which these men were denied treatment, even after penicillin became the standard cure for syphilis. The outcome was that hundreds of Black men died as a result of untreated syphilis, and their families suffered as well. The study was only exposed and stopped in 1972. Next, we have the father of gynecology and his experiments on the enslaved Black women of the 1840s and 1850s. Dr. J. Marion Sims, a prominent 19th century physician, conducted a series of surgeries on enslaved Black women without anesthesia. He is often credited with pioneering gynecology surgery techniques, but these advances were built on the torture of Black women who were used as human subjects in his experiments. Many of these women were subject to repeated and painful surgeries to address issues caused by childbirth to help white women. Without their consent or proper recovery care, Sims' experiments were vital to his success in gynecology, but were carried out with extreme brutality, and his legacy remains despicable and criminal. To this day, Black women still have the highest death rate in healthcare because our pain is ignored by most white doctors. Next, we have the Mississippi appendectomies of the 1930s to the 1970s. In Mississippi, a number of Black women were subject to non-consensual sterilization procedures, often under false premise of medical necessity. These sterilizations were justified by racist notions of eugenics, which sought to reduce the birth rate of poor non-white populations. It is estimated that over 20,000 Black women, mostly poor Black women, were sterilized in the U.S. as part of a state-sponsored effort to control their reproductive rights. These sterilizations were often performed without the women's knowledge or consent, leading to lifelong trauma. For example, in 1961, a white doctor gave Fannie Lou Hamer a hysterectomy without her consent while she was undergoing surgery to remove a uterine tumor. Next, we have the Henrietta Lacks case of 1951. Henrietta Lacks was a black woman from Baltimore, and she had cancerous cells taken without her consent while she was being treated at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Her cells, known as HeLa cells, were the first immortal human cells grown in culture and have contributed to numerous medical advances, including the development of polio vaccine, cancer treatments, and gene mapping. However, her family was never informed about the use of her cells or compensated for the commercialization of her biological material. Henrietta Lacks' case raised significant ethical concerns around consent, exploitation, and the commercialization of biological material. It also brought attention to the intersection of racism and scientific research. Next, we have the Willowbrook State School hepatitis experiment of the 1950s to the 1970s. The Willowbrook State School in Staten Island, New York, was an institution for children with intellectual disabilities. Researchers deliberately infected these children, many of whom were black and from low-income families, with hepatitis in an effort to study the progression of the disease and test vaccines. The children were not given informed consent, and the experiment continued even after it became clear that the children were being harmed. The unethical nature of the experiment was revealed in the 1970s, leading to public outrage and reforms in the ethics of medical research involving vulnerable populations. Next, we have the Tuskegee Airmen and atomic testing in the 1940s to the 1950s. During and after World War II, the U.S. military conducted a series of secret atomic and chemical weapons tests on servicemen, many of whom were black. The Tuskegee Airmen, a group of black pilots, were among those exposed to these dangerous substances without their knowledge or consent. Some of these tests involved exposure to radiation, which led to long-term health issues for those affected soldiers. The tests were part of a broader history of the military experimenting on marginalized groups, and the survivors have faced challenges in seeking justice for the health consequences they endured because the government didn't want to admit what they had done. Next, we have the guinea pig experiments on black prisoners during 1970s to the 1990s. In the 1970s and beyond, prisoners, particularly black prisoners, were often used as subjects in medical experiments. These experiments were conducted without informed consent and involved testing various drugs, vaccines, and medical procedures. Some of these experiments were funded by pharmaceutical companies, Big Pharma, while others were initiated by the government or private research institutions, and many suffered serious health consequences as a result of these experiments. These are just a few of the examples of many unethical experiments in American history against black people, exploited for scientific and medical purposes. These practices were not only a violation of medical ethics, but also a reflection of the deeply rooted racial discrimination that has pervaded U.S. society. Many of these cases have led to reforms in research ethics, particularly in the areas of consent and the treatment of marginalized communities. I leave you with this. Global Black unity is coming in the form of the Black Revolutionary Collective. And this revolution will not be televised or stopped. I love you, black man. I love you, black woman.
This question's for the liberals. When Trump saves TikTok, are you guys going to start to like him? This question's for the liberals. When Trump saves TikTok, are you guys going to start to like him?
You people have way too much faith in a man who cannot control his own bowels. I'm sorry to be the one to tell y'all that, but y'all have way too much faith in a man who literally wears a diaper because he cannot control his bowels. One, Donald Trump cannot save TikTok because the ban is a law. And the only way to repeal the law is if Congress puts in another bill that nullifies it. Do you see the Republican-led Congress doing that anytime soon? Be honest with yourself. The answer is no. 2, why in the name of everything that is holy would Donald Trump save something that he himself at one point tried to ban? You're going to save something that allows people like me to call him Orange Oompa Loompa Cheeto Man and remind people that Donald Trump cannot control his bowels. You're going to save an application that allows me to say that? Come on. And thirdly, why would he want to save it? There is no political gain in it. He's not running for a second term or a third term or an eighth term. He says shit like that because people like you, the uneducated, continue to believe anything that comes out of his mouth. And he continues to say it because it gets people like you to say shit like this. Donald Trump couldn't save TikTok if he was born on Krypton and sent here in a rocket and our Earth sun gave him superpowers. There are only 2 things that are going to happen come January 19th. Either A, TikTok is going to be sold to a American company like BlackRock or Oracle, or B, it will be banned in America. And nothing is going to stop that. I would say do better, but I genuinely don't expect much from MAGA. Reading? No. Understanding? No. Comprehension? No. I expect very little from all of you.
This is all I got from this video, and shout out to this beautiful woman. Like I said, I love her content. She is really, really great. And I am sure that all this experiment, I don't know what I have talked about Tuskegee and other experiment that was done on people that look like me back then, and how it affected Black people. And to this very moment, I am not sure that they were even compensated. Now, I am going to say this, and I hope some of us learned from it. That is also one of the reasons why during COVID, I was really very scared of taking COVID vaccine, because I knew what Black people have been through and all that. And also in the future, some of these things are something that will also guide us. That's why I keep saying, if you do not know your history, you are bound to repeat the same history. So I am I am very huge on telling or letting people know majority of this, so that you will be very much aware to avoid future reoccurrences and all that. Now, during back then, slavery and all that, people that look like me were used for experiment. And the experiment that they were used for, they did not tell them what that was for. And you all know that they said that the experiment was just going to be for like weeks or months, right? And you and not know how long that lasted. Not only did that last that long, the drugs that they were also supposed to give them to like probably keep them like living and all that were not given to them. So they probably were like, oh gosh. Some of all these experiments, I don't know. It's really very hard to talk about because, man, Each time I look at things, each time I hear things like this, I sit back and I am like, man, they've really been trying Black people for so long. And you can imagine families, that got this Tuskegee, and without even knowing what it was, and then ended up transferring it, like, probably to their spouse or, partners and the rest of them. And I don't also want to count the people that did not survive the Tuskegee experiment. See, each time I talk about reparations, reparations are not just only for slavery. Reparations are also for everything that were done to people that look like me. From burning Rosewood, slavery, vagrants law, redlining, all the systemic racism that has been Jim Crow, and all of those that has been affecting people that look like me to this very moment. Yeah. And to the woman asking liberals if they are still going to, why would you, like, you all are really moving mad, sincerely speaking. Some white women are really on there. I don't know what they are usually on sometimes. Because who are you asking if we are going to still support him if they decide not to ban, what is it called? TikTok in US? Why would I support him? Why on earth would somebody support somebody that is all this family? Why would I support him? We don't care. If they want, let them take it down. Yeah, so no, we're still not going to support him. And for you to come out to ask this question shows how dumb you are. You are absolutely. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.